Welcome back to the Ed Morrissey Show podcast. As always, we talk to my good friend Duane, Generally Smo Patterson of the Hugh Hewitt Show, master of the universe, HUGHNIVERSE.com. The troll-free web surfing experience. I was on his show last night. He's on my show this morning. And, of late I've been doing news reviews to start off the podcast. But, I mean, Duane and I do news reviews every single week. So, Duane, welcome to my lead-in and my featured interview.
Glad to be here, and I'm pretty confident that the generic polling between your show and my show shows that your show is more popular than mine.
No, I would actually think it's the other way around.
I think you've got a +4 over my show.
I actually think that you've got a +4 over my show. So, we've got two different pollsters talking about the same thing and coming up with two different answers. Now, there's been a lot of talk about the generic ballot, right? I mean, All Pundit wrote about this last night, about how, it looks like, Democrats are creeping back in some of these polling series. But as he pointed out, it's really a matter of timing, because these same polling series that show Democrats with leads are the ones that have always shown Democrats with leads. I mean, YouGov, Economist.
I think we talked about that.
Yeah.
I think we talked about that a little bit last week. There was one generic poll out there that showed the Democrats were up +4, and everyone's like, "Oh, the ship has righted itself." And
the red wave is over.
And Democratic strategists were talking, Joe Trippi, among others. I think we talked about this last week. Joe Trippi was talking himself into believing that maybe this whole red wave, red wedding thing is overstated and things are going to be all right after all. But then you look at it, and if you take that D+4 that they're saying in a generic congressional ballot, that same poll 6 months ago showed a D+4. Well, if you're trying to say that all these other polls that showed R+1 all the way up to R in double digits, there's been all sorts of congressional generic ballots, and it's been consistently R+ whatever. If you're trying to sell the narrative that it's now inverted and the direction is moved to the left, and so that it's back to where it should be, D+4, the one poll that's showing you D+4 hasn't actually moved at all. It was D+4 6 months ago. There's no movement to Joe Biden. It was an outlier then. It's an outlier now. It doesn't show D+4 6 months ago up to D+8 now, showing further movement to Joe Biden to try and make the case that, well, in reaction to the gun case and in reaction to the abortion case, people are finally coming home to the Democratic Party because of all these issues that matter. That's not what that generic congressional ballot is showing. It's showing stagnation in a Democrat favorable poll, in a Republican favorable poll, or a quote unquote independent poll. There's no good news for Democrats in there at all.
No, and again, I think that you can pick your poison on this. The one that just came up is the AARP targeted congressional districts. And
just found this right before we're taping this, right?
And yeah, you're the one who brought this to me. It's to give you complete credit for this, I want to make sure that people know that this is something that you brought to me, and it's hot. I'll write about it later on this morning or early afternoon probably. But this, this is a fresh poll by AARP, and it has a particularly interesting provenance, Duane. And Josh Kraushaar is the one who pointed this out and kind of got into a little dust up with Mark, debate. I wouldn't say dust up.
Yeah.
This wasn't Leonardo DiCaprio going against Daniel Day-Lewis at 5 points in Gangs of New York. This is a little Twitter debate. That's all.
All that Josh was doing, and he's a great reporter over at Axios. He's a weekly guest at Fuse. He's on all the time.
And by the way, just landed at Axios the last few weeks. He was at National Journal forever
for years. Right, yeah. He was Hotline Josh forever. So this AARP poll is conducted by the pair of Fabrizio and Anzalone, who are basically Biden's pollster. Well, I don't know if it's respectively, but it's Trump's pollster and Biden's pollster that are combining for this AARP poll, right?
Right.
And it's a lefty and a righty that are doing this poll of the 56 most competitive House districts. In their generic ballot, it's R+4. You do some of the breakdowns, and the Democrats, again, let's go back again to 2012 when Mitt Romney ran. What percentage of the Hispanic vote or Latino vote did he get in 2012? Single digits, right? Or 10, 11%.
It was low. It wasn't single digits, but it was low.
It was like 11%. I mean, it was not very high.
Right.
In 2016, how did Trump do with Latinos?
Not well.
Right.
Yeah, he did better in 2020 than he did. Slightly better in 2020. Actually, what happened was the Hispanic vote moved in specific districts in 2020 that were beneficial to Republicans. But overall, the number actually didn't improve as much as people seem to recall that it did. But it was still in the high 20s, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
They're showing this Trump and Biden polling outfit that was commissioned by AARP shows that the Democrats only have a 5-point lead among Hispanics. They only have a 3-point lead amongst Asian Americans. They've got Joe Biden at 37-61.
Now, that's a 5-point lead among Hispanics over 50 years of age. Should make that. Well, okay. Make that. We got to make that distinction, because they do make that distinction in this.
Right.
Fabricio Ward Impact Research poll.
50. Right. 50 plus. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. But I mean, just to go down some of this list, they're only D+6 among women of all ages, right? And it's even among women 50 years of age or older. I mean, this is Democrats usually have a much larger gap for women.
That's the whole point. If you look at the amalgam that is the Democratic mosaic, or the mosaic, if you look at all the pieces that make up the coalition that the Democratic Party is, if they aren't plus 25, 30 in all these subgroups, they don't win elections. If they're down to 5 point, and even if you take overall, if they're single digits among Hispanics, that's not going to win elections, especially if they're hemorrhaging support in African American communities. If they're down to 3-point lead with Asian Americans, if they're starting to split women in certain age demos, that's not how you win elections if you're a Democratic Party. It just isn't. So Mark Halperin, who has bled out in credibility. He
personal credibility. We should note personal credibility. Not necessarily professional credibility,
correct.
But personal credibility. Yeah.
In a different way, you can lump him in the same personal foible camp as Jeffrey Toobin.
No. It was worse. This was. It was worse with Halperin. This is, he was supposedly,
sexually
harassing colleagues, right?
Yes.
This is more of a
Me Too type thing.
Well, it is a Me Too type of thing, and I'm trying to think of the Matt Lauer. It's closer to a Matt Lauer thing than it is a Jeffrey Toobin.
Okay,
thing.
that's fair. It's more like a Matt, but it's he personally disgraced himself to the point where he was banished from MSNBC. He's trying of late to kind of get back into the game, sorta, and he kind of did a little drive-by at Josh, saying, "Oh, come on, you expect me to believe this poll? This Biden's pollster is going to come out with a number like this? Come on." And he's trying to call foul and having Twitter call this misinformation. Look,
better than Miss Frijoles 2022. I'll just say that misinformation is better than Miss Frijoles 2022.
Than Miss Frijoles, yes, that's exactly right. And by the way, did you see that non-apology apology by Gonzalez?
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah, there was a non-apology apology. Let me see if I can pull that up real quick.
This is, and just to bring people up to speed, this is in the Mayra Flores race against Vicente.
This is down in
Gonzalez.
Texas. This is down in Texas 34 against Vicente Gonzalez. And Gonzalez put this up last night. We advertise on many platforms and have no control over their editorial content. We do not pay for political attacks, and we will not be advertising on this platform again. We condemn the offensive remarks on that platform, just as we have condemned Donald Trump's racist rants calling Mexicans rapists and murderers. If only Representative Flores had the courage, or had the courage to do the same. See, here's the problem. Myra Flores said, "This doesn't sound like an apology to me." Yeah. Also, the racist pervert you hired to target me with filth has zero space on his quote unquote blog for ads. So we know all this is a lie. If you were a real man, you would apologize in person and resign. And then she says, "Pero eres poco hombre," which basically means, but you are a little man. And then she says, hashtag creepy chente. So that race is going to get fun.
Oh my gosh. I hadn't seen that. I'll have to take a look at that later.
Oh yeah. That happened. That all happened. Actually, that happened about the same time we were doing after show last night.
Oh, well, there you go. So misinformation, not Miss Frijoles, misinformation. What the misinformation that Mark Halperin, you were just mentioning.
So Mark Halperin doesn't like that poll. Okay. Well, then talk to me about Quinnipiac. Then talk to me about, every other poll. The RCP average of job approval is back down to 37.7.
37.1 the last time I looked.
37.1. So it's all time low. Because it was the last time I looked yesterday, it was at 37.7, which tied the all-time low in RCP. If it's down to 37.1 and he's almost dropping into 36 range on RCP's average, the average of average, it's never gotten that low. It just
36.8
right now.
As we're speaking this morning, it's 36.8, 57.5. That's as low as it's ever been. 36.8.
That's unprecedented in an RCP average. That's unprecedented.
Well, Rasmussen came in with a 36. So, but Reuters came in with a 36 yesterday. So, I mean, it's
And again, in this poll that we just cited, it's only 37, and that's one with Biden's pollster in it.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, this does kind of tend to line up just a little bit.
It sure does, doesn't it?
It does. It does. All right. I want to move on to another. The big issue here, though, I think, and the big takeaway here is, hey, this is a battleground poll. It's not an overall poll, and this probably matters more. And we should be seeing more of battleground polling as we're coming closer to the midterm vote. But this does not look good at all. And the second thing is that if you take all the polls and put them together, you look at the aggregates, not just at RCP, but also at 538, the generic ballot hasn't moved all year. It really steady the whole time.
And again, even if you're looking for good news on the Democratic side, if you look for a Democratic generic ballot or generic poll that shows the D+2, D+3, D+4, you can find them. They're out there, but those haven't moved either. Right. There's everything's stagnant. Everything's baked in. The cake has been baked at this point because people are seeing the inflation. They're seeing gas prices. They're seeing the confidence cascade that's befalling this administration and Democrats. And they've already made their decision of what they're going to do. A lot of this cake has been baked.
Yep. All right. Moving on, we got a couple other hot topics this morning. I've been told repeatedly, Duane, that there's no such thing as cancel culture. No such thing as cancel culture. Doesn't exist.
Unless
you happen to be Dave Chappelle and you literally get your show canceled in Minneapolis by the First Avenue Theater because reasons. Now, there's been some suggestion, and Chappelle even said it in his show last night, which relocated to the Varsity, which is also in Minneapolis, right. That there were threats made to First Avenue personnel's families. And that's the reason why they canceled this. That's not why First Avenue claimed they canceled it, though. First Avenue canceled it because they claim they. I gotta read this to you because this is like a priceless example of doublespeak, right? We believe in diverse voices and the freedom of artistic expression, but in honoring that, we lost sight of the impact this would have.
What did they think they were getting by booking Dave Chappelle to begin with?
Right. They also said the First Avenue team and you have worked hard to make our venues the safest spaces in the country. I'm sorry, when I think of artistic expression, especially when it comes to stand-up comedy, I mean, how in the world can you support that and then claim that you want to just present safe spaces? I mean,
it just doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way. Stand-up comedy and art, for that matter, more generally, exists to call out aspects of society, to call out conformity, right? These guys are knuckling under to fascists who want to enforce a conformity of political thought in American culture. And they knuckled under to them. I mean, the same crowd went over to Varsity and tried to shut it down over there too. And Varsity basically told them to pound sand. They were selling tickets for $129 a pop over at Varsity for Chappelle, right? And this is,
of course,
last minute. And it sold out, and the ticket brokers were making $3.50 a pop. This guy's got an audience, and the audience showed up. I mean, this is nonsense. This is so craven on First Avenue's part. Don't tell me that cancel culture doesn't exist when they're literally canceling Dave Chappelle for what he's saying.
It definitely exists. The question is going to be how long this is tolerated before at some point it begins to eat itself.
I think that's already happening. I think it's already beginning to eat itself.
And that's what I'm thinking too. Over the course of the next year, 2, 3 years tops, my guess is that whole movement of cancel culture is going to eat itself, and more small businesses, more and more corporations are going to just say, "Screw you! I'm done being held hostage by everybody's personal sensitivities."
So, along those lines, I mean, this is outrageous, right? I'm not necessarily a huge fan of Dave Chappelle. I'm not actually a huge fan of stand-up comedy. Most of it's not very well done. Most of it is performative politically performative in the worst possible sense. Samantha Bee is probably the worst example of that, right? I mean, I've watched her work a number of times, and I've yet to find one genuine laugh. All she's doing is emoting in a politically correct sort of way to get applause from her audience. I mean, none of this. It's certainly not courageous. Dave Chappelle is actually standing up to the popular messaging and poking fun at it. That takes some guts. What Samantha Bee and Stephen Colbert and Jimmy Kimmel and Fallon do isn't courageous. It's pandering. It's entirely pandering. And you finally get somebody who's not pandering, and all of a sudden artistic expression goes right out the window.
That's exactly right. Did you see the story about the lesbian bar in Portland? Speaking of how this whole cancel culture thing eats itself.
No, I haven't heard that one. It sounds like a setup for a joke.
It does, right?
A priest, a minister, and a rabbi walk into a lesbian bar.
20 lesbians walk into a bar. This is a place called Doc Marie's. It is a lesbian bar that opened in Portland on July 1st with the hope of bringing more inclusivity to the city of Portland. But
wait a minute. Portland has an inclusivity problem?
Yes. And the inclusivity problem was targeted on the lesbian bar. Just 1 week after their grand opening, they were forced to shut down because of the complaints that the bar was not a safe enough space. The crowd on opening day was huge. One woman said that the line for entry was wrapped around the block with literally 200 lesbians waiting to get in. But the excitement about a new progressive hangout dissipated quickly. Within days, the bar found itself on the receiving end of accusations of not being inclusive enough for trans people and people of color. Despite mask mandates being lifted, patrons accused the bar of not implementing enough COVID safety measures. Patrons also complained that Doc Maurice had culturally appropriative art on the walls. And what ended up happening is the employees of the bar also demanded that the bar host free opportunities for education for the community. We, the Marie Equa Workers Collective, hereafter known as MEWC, are composed of the current employees of Doc Marie's. We only speak for ourselves, not the ownership of the bar. We felt misled about the safe space being welcoming. Our vision is a queer worker-owned cooperative that is run democratically, provides mutual aid, and hosts free opportunities for education in the community. The owners have now been given a 24-hour deadline to adhere to the demands of the employees, which include relinquishing ownership of the bar.
It always includes that.
And handing the business to them as a co-op. Now, again, at some point, this cultural
same thing happened in Philadelphia. Remember with that coffee shop that was also supposed to be super inclusive. The employees decided that they wanted to own the place rather than the ownership itself. Same pattern.
A week after this bar opened, the inmates want to now control and own the asylum. Right.
Well, I've got an even better one for you. I will see your lesbian bar in Portland, and I will raise you a made up sport in the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom. The U.S. Quidditch and Major League Quidditch.
Of course,
right? Has now rebranded as U.S. Quad Ball and Major League Quad Ball. This is because
this is
J.K. Rowling.
This is a J.K. Rowling. We can't let her. We can't let anything she created get any life at this point.
Right. Rowling has received This is from Variety. I'm reading from Variety. Rowling has received widespread criticism for her series of tweets about the transgender community. Quote: "Our sport has developed a reputation as one of the most progressive sports in the world on gender equality and inclusivity, in part thanks to its gender maximum rule, which stipulates that a team may not have more than 4 players of the same gender on the field at any time." U.S. Quad Ball and Major League Quad Ball said in a joint statement last year. Both organizations feel it's imperative to live up to this reputation in all aspects of this operation, and that the name change is a step in that direction. Now, they were going to do this last year. I don't know why it got interrupted. They adopted it yesterday. I mean, they took a sport that didn't actually exist.
Yes.
Created something that was sort of along the lines of what J.K. Rowling had. Didn't realize, by the way, and this is really what the issue is.
They took a sport that didn't exist that you actually cannot play because of the laws of gravity.
Yeah, because it's on flying broomsticks.
Right. That you can't actually play. And they are complaining because it's not inclusive enough.
Right. So for 20 years, they've lived off of Rowling's, almost 20 years, they've lived off of Rowling's creation, with contributing nothing back whatsoever, right? Just basically sucking off of it. And then it came to their attention last year that they can't use the word Quidditch because Warner Brothers owns that in the United States and Rowling owns it in the UK.
Right.
And so they were already along the way of having to figure out a different name for this sport, but now they're posing as, we're doing this for inclusivity. We're striking a blow against attacks on the transgender community by the person who actually created this nonsense sport. This cosplay that we do on the field.
So tying this all together in a nice big rainbow-colored bow here. Here's the thing. There's even the best economic forecast. If you are an optimist, the best economic forecast is through the 24 election, not this year's midterm, through the 24 election. we're looking at 6% inflation, probably. Right?
Oh yeah, at least, yeah.
At least, and that's best case scenario. We're looking at 6% inflation. That's on top of the inflation we've already had. That's not even withstanding a recession we may have on top of everything. I mean, we could be full Jimmy Carter stagflation between now and 24. All this stuff going on, and the left in this country is farting around with this stuff, and businesses, patrons, most people are going to look at this and go, I'm sorry, I don't have the time, the patience, the money, the energy to deal with unserious people right now. There are real serious things going on in this country. I'm tired of the unserious, and this whole cancel culture stuff is just going to go off to the margins, and they can go do whatever they want to do with themselves. But the rest of the country is just going to say, I'm done with this. Yep. They are going to say, I'm done with this, like the country said, I'm done with COVID.
Well,
it may still be out there, but I'm done with the COVID stuff.
Well, and I also think, too, that you're seeing this already in the progressive organizations that have been infected by this. We call it wokery, but it's a little bit broader than that. It's not just critical race theory. It also has to do with the, trans movement,
Yep.
The issue started as legitimate grievance over historical discrimination, right? I mean, homosexual activity was criminalized up until basically Stonewall, right? In the early 1970s.
Sure.
Blacks were suppressed. Their civil rights were suppressed until after the civil rights movement, even after, 100 years after the Civil War. And there's, some legitimate issues about the fact that there was a lot of wealth destruction during that period of time, which left the entire black community behind everybody else. And that includes all the immigrant populations that came in during that period who were able to build wealth. So there's some legitimate issues in there. But what it's turned into is an ideology that's entirely based on immutable characteristics. And this is what the problem is with critical race theory, with critical gender theory as well, is that it reduces everybody to their immutable characteristics. And when that happens, you no longer have an ability to, you don't have a philosophy. There's no room for philosophy. There's no room for what we would normally term political ideology or even policy. It is strictly tribalism. And that's the reason why now you have intersectionality, because you have these groups competing with each other for power in these organizations, and they created intersectionality to say, well, if I check 3 boxes from the column and you only check 2 boxes from the column, then my view should take priority. And that's exactly what intersectionality is. Intersectionality is just a power distribution model, and that's a dead end.
Right. And if it's not being done off of merit, or merit's not even a consideration there, you're never going to get the achievements that you think you want.
Yeah, exactly. It's, I mean, it's a dead end philosophy. And what you're seeing, and the reason why you and I keep saying it's going to eat itself is because it has no other outcome except eating itself. You're going to have all of these people who are going to get more and more virulent about their competition for primacy. And this is what you get. You get progressives in the street trying to silence a black man who is actually a progressive himself speaking about issues because they don't like his speech, and violently trying to suppress a black man's speech in Minneapolis. That's what you get. That's the end result of this. It's fascism. It's sheer fascism. It's insane.
It is insane. Absolutely.
Yep. All right. Well, we're almost out of time. What's coming up on tomorrow's Hugh Hewitt Show?
Well, I'm not quite sure what we're going to do, because we have been taping like crazy as we're taping this. We just taped a long conversation with Nina Totenberg on the court's term, and Hugh kind of debating her a little bit about the court's term, which is kind of an interesting conversation. We are going to be, I'm coming in this afternoon. I'm actually not doing an after show today because I've got to do my day job. My day job is we are going to be taping an interview with Henry Kissinger tonight.
Wow.
Who's got a new book coming up, and this is going to be Hugh thinks this may be one of the last interviews that actually Dr. K does, because he's 99 years old, and you're on borrowed time after what, 70 at this point. But Dr. K's got a brand new book out. He's still mentally sharp. He's still in the game. He has advised every president since Eisenhower, with the exception of one president. Can you guess which president has not taken the consultations of Dr. K?
Joe Biden.
Joe Biden.
Yep.
Yep.
And I think he's actually publicly attacked Dr. K. And that's part of the reason why, too. Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. All right. Well, that's coming up at 6 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow, 5 a.m. in God's time zone, 3 a.m. on the left coast. And Duane's after show is at 8 p.m. thing.
Yes.
Normally at 8 p.m. Eastern time tonight. But 8 p.m. Eastern time. And you got your Friday show coming up, right?
I do.
Yeah.
Lilacs normally joins me on Friday. James Lilacs, humorist extraordinaire, columnist for the Minneapolis Star Tribune, National Review, and other places. He will join me, and we have all sorts of fun. We do the news, and we also do what's called a baker's dozen, which is kind of 13 oddball stories. You've done that.
Oh yeah. The baker's dozen's a lot of fun. Yeah. So normally I'm kind of tied up, but yeah, the baker's dozen's fun. We kind of do with, I mean, I don't know that we call it that, but you run a bunch of stuff by me on Wednesday nights too. By the way,
it's kind of a Joe Biden baker's dozen.
Yeah, with me, yes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. By the way, you should remind James that, and I'd forgotten about this, that Cam Edwards went to his party in 2008 at the Republican convention, the one where John Ondrasik was.
I didn't know Cam was at that party.
He was at that party. I didn't remember that, but you and I were there, and Cam was there because he was there for the convention, right? And somebody invited him over. He still remembers that party. And I said, and he says it was so awesome watching John play, because he did. He sang a little bit for us, and then he just mingled because he was a guest. And then and I said, well, you actually had two awesome experiences there. I said, first off, you got a chance to see John, but the second thing is you went to a Lilacs party, which is like the golden ticket in Minneapolis. Nobody does a party like James Lilacs does a party.
It is the event of the season, isn't it?
It's always the event of the season.
If you can get into Jasperwood, you've made it.
And so he says, what I was really surprised by was that there wasn't a lot. I was expecting to see a lot of kitsch, from his books. Unfortunate. What was it? His book is, his books on unfortunate interior decor and stuff like that. And I said, no, James writes about that, but he has impeccable taste.
Oh yeah, very much so.
Impeccable taste. So you should remind, we discussed that in yesterday's VIP Gold Chat. So you should remind James about that, and the fact that we're still talking about that party 14 years later.
I will. James is always a hoot to deal with. I will relay that conversation. He keeps asking if we're going to get back up there and do something again, but we'll have to see if we can find a reason to do a state fair or something. We got to figure out some reason to get back up there again.
Just as long as it's not snowing.
Yeah, I know you're kind of done with that, aren't you?
I'm done with the snow. All right, Duane Patterson, Master of the Universe, thanks for being with us as always on Thursdays. We'll talk to you next week, sir.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for watching and listening to the Ed Morrissey Show podcast. Be sure to subscribe at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube to get alerted as soon as new episodes get published. You can support the Ed Morrissey Show and Hot Air's VIP reporting by becoming a VIP member, too. Visit hotairvip.com and use the promo code SAVEAmerica, all one word, for 40% off your membership. Choose VIP Gold and gain membership to access to all of the Town Hall sites. Thanks again for watching and listening.